Imagine navigating life with a quiet strength that refuses to tolerate what drains your soul. Imagine recognizing without guilt or confusion the behaviors that rob you of peace, clarity, and self-respect. Today, we begin a journey through the lens of Carl Jung, a man who spent his life exploring the depths of human psychology to uncover 7 behaviors that are not just damaging, but deeply unacceptable to your growth, identity, and inner peace. And the last one, the 7th, is the most powerful of all, a behavior that, if ignored, could sabotage the very foundation of who you are. This is not just another philosophical discussion. This is a blueprint for personal clarity. We're diving into the unconscious, guided by one of the greatest minds of the 20th century, to reclaim what so many of us unknowingly give away: our energy, our truth, our autonomy. Jung's work wasn't about quick fixes. It was about transformation. And transformation begins when we stop tolerating what should never have been allowed in the first place. So ask yourself, what have you been tolerating that is quietly breaking you? Let's begin. The first, unacceptable behavior. Disrespect for your boundaries and the expectation that you have none. Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." But it's even more terrifying to be in relationships where the self is not accepted at all, unless it's convenient. People who consistently disrespect your boundaries are not just ignoring your words, they are denying your personhood. They minimize your needs. They question your right to say no. They make you feel guilty for honoring your limits. And over time, you begin to forget where you end, and they begin. This isn't about a single disagreement or occasional tension. It's about a pattern, one that trains you to prioritize harmony over authenticity. They may mock your boundaries, they may test them subtly through repeated requests, emotional pressure, or by playing the victim when you assert yourself. But as Jung warned, what you resist persists. When you avoid enforcing your boundaries to keep the peace, you don't avoid conflict. You delay it, and it returns stronger, deeper, more painful. Because boundaries are not walls, they are doors. They let love in, but they keep violation out. Without them, there is no respect. And without respect, love is just a word people use to get what they want. So ask yourself, who in your life consistently pushes your limits, then blames you for reacting? We teach people how to treat us, not with our words, but with our consistency. When you set a boundary and back it up with silence, withdrawal, or confusion, you're not protecting your energy. You're feeding the very behavior you want to escape. Jung believed that integrity is a spiritual act. Every time you honor a boundary, you return to yourself. The second unacceptable behavior, emotional irresponsibility. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves, Jung wrote. But there's a difference between introspection and scapegoating. Many people project their unresolved pain onto others. They refuse to own their emotions. Instead, they blame, they criticize, they explode, and worst of all, they expect you to carry the burden of emotions they won't take responsibility for. Jung called this projection the act of attributing to others what one refuses to acknowledge in oneself. When someone accuses you of being selfish, cold, irrational, ask yourself, are they describing you, or are they revealing a part of themselves they refuse to face? Projection is subtle. It wears many masks: anger, sarcasm, even passive aggression. But the core of it is the same. It makes you responsible for someone else's inner world. And that is a violation of your psychological space. When you tolerate this, you begin to shrink. You walk on eggshells. You second-guess your truth. You spend hours analyzing what you did wrong, when the truth is, it was never about you. Emotional responsibility means recognizing, feeling, and processing one's own emotions without expecting others to fix them. It means saying, "This is my pain, and I will face it." Anything less is not strength, it's avoidance. Carl Jung believed that healing begins the moment we bring the unconscious into consciousness. And few things are more unconscious than our tendency to project. He warned that until we do this, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. How many relationships have you endured where you were punished for someone else's emotional chaos? The answer to that question may reveal far more than you think. As we move forward, we'll begin to uncover more behaviors that Jung would urge us, no, demand us, not to accept. These are not minor flaws. They are fractures in the soul of human connection. And as you'll see, each behavior we explore is not just about others. It's also a mirror, because sometimes the person we tolerate the most dangerous behavior from is ourselves. But we'll get there. For now, take a moment, reflect. Who are the people in your life that wear masks of goodness while quietly draining you? Who hands you the weight of their emotions and blames you for dropping it? The truth is liberating, but only if we dare to see it. And remember, the most powerful revelations are still to come. In fact, the seventh behavior we'll uncover will reframe the way you see not only others, but your very self. Are you ready to go deeper? Let's continue this journey into the deep waters of human behavior, not merely to observe others, but to awaken to what we allow, what we carry, and what it costs us. Carl Jung didn't simply study the mind, he explored the soul. And he warned us, what we do not confront in ourselves, we will confront in others. The third, unacceptable behavior. Passive aggression and the silent punishments of the emotionally immature. Jung understood that the psyche, when left unchecked, finds distorted ways to express its pain. Passive aggression is one of those distortions. It's the language of the unhealed. Words not spoken, doors slammed just a little too hard. The cold silence that screams louder than any argument. What's dangerous about passive aggression is that it creates confusion. There are no clear accusations, no obvious battles, just a slow withdrawal of warmth, a vague discontent, an unspoken expectation that you must read minds and walk on glass. It is a form of emotional manipulation, because instead of communicating needs, these individuals punish you for not meeting them intuitively. It's immaturity in disguise, and it damages trust. Passive aggression erodes the foundation of any relationship. It teaches you to suppress, to apologize for what you didn't do, and to anticipate moods like weather patterns. Over time, it breeds resentment, not connection. Jung taught that neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering. When people are too afraid to feel and express their true emotions, they create neurotic patterns, and passive aggression is one of the most common. It masquerades as calm, but it's fueled by fear. Fear of conflict, fear of being vulnerable, fear of asking for what one really needs. So ask yourself, have you mistaken someone's silence for peace? Have you spent too long decoding moods that were never your responsibility to fix? When we stop tolerating passive aggression, we start demanding mature communication. We say, if you are hurt, say so. If you are angry, express it with clarity. But do not make me a prisoner of your emotional avoidance. Emotional maturity is not optional. It is the foundation of trust, intimacy, and psychological safety. Without it, there is only confusion, and confusion is not love. The fourth unacceptable behavior, ingrained victimhood and the refusal to grow. Jung was not gentle when it came to victim mentality. He understood that suffering is a part of life, but remaining a victim is a choice. And some choose it because it grants them something powerful, the ability to avoid responsibility. There is a difference between being hurt and choosing to stay hurt, between experiencing injustice and building an identity around it. When someone refuses to take any ownership of their life, their choices, their patterns, they become emotionally dangerous because nothing is ever their fault. Every failed relationship, every broken dream, every harsh word is always someone else's doing. Jung taught that healing requires shadow work, facing the dark parts of ourselves, integrating what we fear, and choosing growth over blame. Chronic victimhood is the refusal to engage in that process. It is a psychological paralysis disguised as helplessness. And here's the trap. Victimhood often invites sympathy. It draws people in. It makes you want to help, to rescue, to fix. But over time, you realize you're not helping someone rise. You're being pulled into their emotional swamp. Helping someone who refuses to help themselves is not compassion, it's codependency. When someone lives in the mindset of life is happening to me, they surrender all power. Jung urged us to reject that illusion. He reminded us that the unconscious becomes our fate if we don't make it conscious. So ask yourself, how many conversations do you have with people who never ask what they could have done differently? How often do you find yourself being the emotional caretaker of someone who refuses to take one honest look in the mirror? We must be very clear. Validating someone's pain is not the same as validating their inertia. We honor suffering, but we do not feed stagnation. The soul grows through struggle, not through blame. And yet, these people will say things like, "You abandoned me," when what they really mean is, "You stopped enabling me." Jung knew that the path to individuation, the process of becoming whole, requires brutal honesty. And some people will do anything to avoid that mirror. You must decide if you want to join them in denial or stand alone in truth. Because here is a truth most people are afraid to say. You do not owe your life to anyone who refuses to take ownership of theirs. This is the turning point in our journey, where the behaviors become harder to detect, but more dangerous to tolerate. The behaviors we discuss next will not only expose the nature of those around you, but may also reveal the unconscious ways in which you betray yourself. That's right. We'll begin to uncover not just what others do, but what we allow, what we rationalize, what we permit, because we are afraid of the consequences of walking away. And the consequences of silence are far greater. Because remember, the seventh and final behavior is the one that holds the key to your inner freedom and your future self. Are you willing to see it? There comes a moment in every inner journey when the real question is no longer, "What are others doing to me?" but rather, "Why have I allowed it for so long?" Carl Jung spoke of the shadow, the part of ourselves we deny, suppress, or reject. He believed that facing it was the key to transformation, not by blaming the world, but by confronting the unconscious contracts we make with it. The silent agreements that say, "I will keep you in my life even if it costs me myself." As we enter the fifth unacceptable behavior, we step into one of the most damaging patterns that often hides behind the illusion of love, the fifth unacceptable behavior: manipulation masked as kindness. Jung believed in the necessity of authenticity for psychological health. To him, nothing was more dangerous than a person who wears a mask, someone who appears warm, generous, and understanding, but whose intentions are deeply self-serving. This is not mere deception. It is psychological invasion. When someone uses your empathy to control you, when they twist their gestures of kindness into tools of guilt, you're not in a relationship. You're in a power dynamic. Jung called this the problem of the persona, the mask we present to the world, which often hides the shadow within. Some people weaponize this persona, and the worst part, we often don't realize it until the damage is done. These individuals exploit your conscience. They make you feel responsible for their emotions. They confuse you into thinking that boundaries are cruelty and self-respect is betrayal. But kindness without honesty is manipulation. Compassion without truth is control. So ask yourself, who in your life makes you feel guilty for doing what's best for you? Refusing to tolerate this behavior is not selfish. It is sacred, because Jung understood that your integrity must never be a casualty of someone else's performance. Now we move into the sixth unacceptable behavior, and this one is deceptive because it often comes from those closest to us. The sixth unacceptable behavior: constant criticism disguised as concern. Carl Jung knew the destructive power of words. He believed that what we speak not only reflects our inner world, it shapes the world of others. And constant criticism, no matter how cleverly disguised, is a weapon. This behavior sounds like love. It sounds like care, but its real purpose is control. It looks like this: I just want the best for you. That's why I'm pointing this out. I'm only being honest. Someone has to be. If you can't take a little criticism, maybe you're too sensitive. But underneath these words is a message. You are not enough as you are. You need to be fixed, and I will be the one to fix you. This is not feedback. This is erosion. Slowly, you begin to doubt yourself. Your confidence shrinks, your joy fades, and worst of all, you begin to internalize the belief that their voice is truth. Jung warned us of the tyrant within, the inner critic formed by the judgments we've absorbed from others. He understood that repeated criticism shapes identity. It creates neurosis, anxiety, even self-hatred. But here's the deeper danger. You start believing that love always comes with judgment, that to be close to someone, you must be small enough to not threaten their ego. That's not love, that's emotional sabotage. So ask yourself, do you feel more alive or more diminished after being around certain people? If their words make you shrink, second guess, or self-abandon, it's not your duty to stay. It's your responsibility to leave. And here's a hard truth. Many people who criticize you the most are actually projecting their deepest fears. They resent your growth because it reminds them of their own stagnation. Carl Jung believed that everyone carries a shadow, but not everyone has the courage to confront it. Those who do not often turn their gaze outward and try to control the light in others. You don't need that kind of approval. What you need is the courage to stand in your own truth, even if it makes others uncomfortable. Because there is one behavior left to explore, one so subtle, yet so devastating, that Jung would call it a betrayal of the soul. It is the seventh and final behavior, and it does not come from others, it comes from you. But before we go there, pause and reflect. Where in your life are you mistaking criticism for care? Who are you shrinking for when you are born to expand? And who continues to cross your boundaries? Not because they don't understand them, but because they know you'll let them. These questions are not easy, but neither is awakening. Jung believed that the journey to the true self requires descent before ascent, that we must pass through darkness to find our light. The final behavior we're about to uncover may be the one thing standing between you and the life you've been seeking. Are you ready for the truth? There is a silence more deafening than any noise, a betrayal more personal than any wound inflicted by another. It is the betrayal of the self. And Jung warned us, it is the most dangerous behavior of all. The seventh and final unacceptable behavior, abandoning yourself to keep others comfortable. Of all the warnings Jung gave us, perhaps none is more urgent than this one, because the deepest suffering does not come from what others do to us. It comes from what we do to ourselves. In order to be accepted, loved, or simply not rejected, we shrink. We silence our truth. We dim our joy. We play roles, wear masks, and shapeshift to fit into containers too small for the truth of who we are. And we tell ourselves it's necessary. We call it compromise. We call it maturity. But often, it is fear. Fear of being alone, fear of not being loved, fear of disappointing those who expect us to stay the same. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But very few claim that privilege. Most surrender it in childhood and continue to abandon it with every people-pleasing smile, every silenced boundary, every unspoken dream. We become loyal to everyone except ourselves. And here is where the tragedy begins. Because in our attempt to be loved, we forget how to live. We become prisoners of approval. We mold our identity around the expectations of others, forgetting that what is not authentic will never bring peace. Jung believed that the self, the true self, is not something we invent. It is something we remember. And when we abandon it, the psyche rebels. Depression, anxiety, bitterness, exhaustion, these are not weaknesses. They are the symptoms of a soul that has been silenced for too long. And so we must ask, where have you made yourself small so others wouldn't feel threatened? Where have you betrayed your values in exchange for temporary connection? Where have you said yes when your entire being screamed no? And perhaps most importantly, how much longer are you willing to live like this? Self-abandonment is a slow death. It doesn't come all at once. It comes in tiny moments, a glance you ignore, a feeling you suppress, a truth you swallow. But the weight of all those silences eventually becomes unbearable. Jung warned us that the unconscious becomes fate. When you abandon your inner voice, the world around you begins to reflect your silence in your relationships, your work, your health, your sense of meaning. But the moment you stop abandoning yourself, everything changes. You begin to choose peace over pleasing, truth over comfort, authenticity over acceptance. And here is the paradox. The moment you honor your truth, the right people appear, the right doors open, the right life begins. Because the universe does not reward the mask, it rewards the mirror. So what does it look like to stop abandoning yourself? It looks like saying no without guilt. It looks like walking away, even when you're afraid of what comes next. It looks like letting people be disappointed and choosing your soul over their approval. It looks like standing in the fire of truth and realizing, I'd rather be disliked for who I am than loved for who I'm not. Carl Jung was not trying to make us comfortable. He was trying to wake us up. He knew the cost of unconscious living, and he dedicated his life to helping others reclaim their wholeness. And now, the choice is yours. Will you continue to tolerate what slowly kills your spirit? Or will you rise, not with rage, not with rebellion, but with the quiet, unwavering power of someone who has remembered who they are? You are not here to be tolerated, you are here to be whole. You are not here to be understood by those committed to misunderstanding you. You are here to live in truth. So let us remember the 7 unacceptable behaviors Jung warned us not to tolerate. The presence of manipulation disguised as love. The normalization of emotional chaos. Passive aggression and emotional immaturity. Chronic victimhood and the refusal to grow. The erosion of your boundaries. The slow poison of constant criticism. And above all, the abandonment of your own soul. These are not just red flags, they are signals, invitations to return to yourself. Not tomorrow, not when it's convenient, but now. Because the time for silence is over. The time for pretending is over. This is the moment you stop asking, what do they want from me? And begin asking, what does my soul require of me? And when you honor that voice, everything changes. Not because the world becomes easier, but because you become unshakable. Jung believed in the alchemy of the soul, the transformation of suffering into wisdom, fear into power, darkness into light. That journey begins the moment you decide, I will no longer betray myself for belonging. I will belong to myself first. So now I ask you not with urgency, but with sacred intention. What will you no longer tolerate? What truth are you finally ready to speak? And who might you become if you stopped betraying yourself for even one more day? Leave your answer in the comments. Your words might just awaken someone else. And if this message resonated, if it lit something within you, do not let it fade. Share it, carry it, live it. Because the world does not need more silence. It needs more souls who have remembered themselves.